As we prepare to kick off our UIL concert and sight reading season, I've just got a few reminders for my small school friends or those of you that do not have a percussion person that might be able to look into these things for you. The first is make sure you tighten your snares. Now, you may be saying, hey, I've got my snare drum tuned up, but I'm actually talking about the snares themselves. There's a little knob on the side of the snare drum by the throw-off switch that if you turn clockwise, that will help you make the snares a little tighter. There's a big difference between this sound and this sound. I think the second sound records a little bit better and helps you have a more staccato sound from your snare drum so that it's not so wide. And that'll help you be able to control the sound. With a small band, I want to make sure that the snare sound doesn't cut through so much. So I also always take a rug to put underneath the snare drum so that it's actually soaking up some of the sound and we don't get so much of the splashback from the wooden floor. Also, as you're rehearsing in the band hall, look at what your percussionists are doing in transition, or maybe you have one student that is playing more than one instrument in a song. And if they have crash cymbals and have to set them down and go play something else, do you hear the sound of the crash cymbals, maybe hitting something like the ground? If you don't have a cradle for the cymbals, then consider having some sort of towel or something on a stand where they can put mallets down, claves, anything that might be like an instrument on a metal stand. It can be kind of a little distracting if you're not careful. So I encourage you to pick up some hand towels. We actually had a previous director put a piece of felt on a wooden board, and this is what we use for our trap table. And so just think about those small details and what sound is coming out that's not intended to be coming out into the audience. Also, make a packing list of every instrument that your percussion students are going to be taking the contest. Now, don't just put snare drum, put snare drum stand, and snare sticks, because if your kids are anything like my kids, we will show up to contests with only the snare drum and nothing to put it on or nothing to play it with. So be very specific. Put everything on there, every mallet, every stick, every instrument that you're going to be using. Create a timpani tuning chart. And I know maybe you don't want to have your kids tune the timpani. I check it. Sometimes I even tune it for them, especially if they're middle school students. But you want to know what drums you're using, what tuning is going to start off with, and what drums you change. This is what mine looks like, but you definitely want to check it in between songs so that you're not having students play wrong notes and they clash with the tubas or whatever. So also train your students to open up the legs of whatever stand you have wider than whatever you're putting on it. So in this example right here, you'll see how this snare drum will probably topple over because the legs are too narrow. And so because the kids are having perhaps to pack and then unpack, they're very likely not to go through the process of opening up the legs enough, and you might have some other issues when you get on stage. Along the same lines, use the memory locks on your stands. When you take apart your hardware and then set it back up on stage, sometimes it may not be the same height. So memory locks are these little pieces of metal on the stand that helps you be able to set it back together, and it's already marked for you. If you don't have memory locks, you can always use maybe just a strip of electrical tape. And finally, make sure you assign your sight reading parts beforehand. Those are already on the website, the instrumentation. You want your kids to know what they're playing when they walk in the door, so it's one less thing you have to worry about. And have that list handy in case they forget. They're going to be nervous. You might be a little bit on edge as well. So hey, good luck to you. I hope that all these things help and you're able to implement some of these in your band program.